wasn't prepared to discuss that this evening, so that's something that we were going to discuss.
We're going to discuss that at the finance.
So that'll all be discussed?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd rather do it then when we have all the details, and plus we're also going to talk about money left over from this year like we always do and what to do with it. So there's a lot of other information you need before I think you can make any decision on this.
Can I, to me the motion is to approve the initiation of the campaign, and I think Mr. Thompson, so to me that's all this is, and then hash out the details in finance. But I think Mr. Thompson has a point that, maybe some of those words don't need to be in there, and maybe it holds it, it kind of sort of predisposes what we're doing before we talk about it. So, but to me, rather than, we weren't going to get into this tonight, Mrs. Johnson just stated she's not prepared. This, I thought we needed the approval to just launch the campaign. That's what this meant to me. I don't know if I missed the vote on that or not.
I think I prefer you, since you've been involved directly in this.
Yeah, it's to start the campaign, and I mean, we're all doing something new here, so I mean, we all have the intention to do the right thing, and the idea is that this money is earmarked for the stadium. It's designated, people are donating for the stadium. So, and I think, we could take, it's something that we need to discuss further. Mrs. Johnson, she talked about the special revenue account. And I think then it would be up to the board then to decide, once it's in the special revenue account, where, if money is paid out of that, or if then it's put into the capital fund.
Yeah, I wanted to say, in regard to what I said during the meetings, there was discussion. That's what I'm saying. During the meeting, there was discussion saying where will the funds be designated, and part of that discussion was to replenish the capital account. That's not a definite, as Mrs. Yardley said, obviously that's a conversation to have down the road. I think really the intention of the motions is to, as Mr. Casper stated, get this moving forward. We set these various donation, advertising, sponsorship dollar amounts, and that's our goal tonight, so that we can get these approved and get started with all of this.
Any other comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, I have
Mrs. Yard.
Yeah, I have a comment. I just want to say that the administrative accounting procedures will be put in place prior to accepting any money, so that's something that the administration is working out the details of that. And our goal is to, kick off the campaign on, as long as the board approves all these pricing, to kick off the campaign on Friday. We had talked about, there was discussion of what costs were, how the costs were going to be paid for, and as you see in the motion, it talks about all the cost of the signs and the pavers and the advertising to come out of the raised revenue. I had asked questions of Mrs. Johnson after that, and she had recommended that we say that the direct costs associated with the campaign be taken from the fundraising, and then, but indirect costs are not, because that's generally not how, we don't generally attribute indirect costs to the cost of any project.
Any other comments or questions from board members? If not, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. At this point, we will move. You don't have another meeting scheduled at this point?
Yeah.
You do?
No, we don't, but we will schedule another one in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, anything that board members need to have discussed? No? Then I'll move to new business. Mrs. Cron placed at your desks tonight a paper that has to do with a ballot that the PSBA has asked us to vote upon. They actually have asked all the school entities. I know know, Mrs. Miller participated in the one at the intermediate unit, and Mrs. Miller and Mrs. Schmidt and I participated in the one at the vocational technical school. So what has been asked here, and really the intent, I believe, of PSBA was to make this more accessible, to get more board participation. I believe, unfortunately, the consequence has been some confusion over exactly how to do it and go forward. So what I'm going to ask, with your indulgence tonight, is I'm going to suggest that we vote because the board needs to submit a ballot of the candidates that they would prefer to have. Let me first comment that on this paper that you have in front of us, only two of those things that we would be voting on, the president-elect and the at-large representatives from the eastern region. We happen to be Region 11, so that's where we belong, so to speak, have more than one candidate. Some of them have asterisks. Those are people that have been vetted by PSBA, and they are essentially recommending. I would say that I am going to move that we approve the same slate of candidates as was approved at the intermediate unit. That would be Kathy Swope from Lewisburg Area School District for the president-elect, Mark Miller from Centennial for the vice president, Otto Voigt III from Muhlenberg for the treasurer, and Michael Fascinetto, whose name I hopefully haven't murdered too badly, from Bethlehem Area School District for the at-large representative from the east. So I make that in the form of a motion. Do I have a second to approve that particular list of candidates? Thank you, Mrs. Schmidt. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. So Mrs. Cron, I believe you are in charge of making sure that PSBA gets this. And I'd ask Mr. Thompson, since you're attending the PSBA conference, to, if this question comes up, to kind of explain to them that it seems a bit more confusing than it would need to be the way they present it to us. Thank you. And thank you for board members for supporting that. Other new business?
Dr. Darnell, I have
Yes.
one item, if no one else does. The board previously received a request for an exception to its transportation policy, which was a matter that concerned a particular student, and so the board discussed it properly in executive session. But I would advise the board to make a final decision on that tonight by way of a motion. The motion would be to deny the request for exception to district transportation policy submitted by BP, and if the board sees fit, it could, someone could so move that sentence and the board could consider it. But the board discussed it properly in executive session, but I advise that they make a final decision here.
All right. Since I'm able to read this from the paper, I will make that motion to deny the request for the exception to the district's transportation policy submitted by BPP. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Deming. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. At this point, any other new business? Not? We'll move to announcements. The next regularly scheduled school board meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 27th, 2014, at 7:30 here in the LGI 3.3 room. There were executive sessions held on both September 10th and September 15th for the purposes of personnel matters, some of which have been discussed tonight. There also will be an executive session following tonight's meeting for the purpose of personnel issues. At this point, we are ready for comments or questions from guests. Please state your name, municipality, and stick to 3 minutes or less, please.
Charles Healy, Bedminster. This is just a housekeeping matter, and during the course of the meeting, I found it difficult to hear Mrs. Yardley, Mrs. Schmidt, and your legal counsel. I don't know if because the laptop is in front of the mic, or that the mic could be brought further to them. I don't have trouble hearing anybody else. I don't know if there's a volume switch that you could turn up, but it was very much strained to hear what they had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hillick. Any other comments or questions from Mrs. Herring?
I've not had the opportunity to attend the fundraising committee meetings, so tonight's discussion was somewhat enlightening to me. Over the last several months, this board has insisted that the parents in this community, at certain times, submit their financials, turn over their fundraising money, and wanted that, and wanted accountings. And there was a meeting where a budget got waved around. And you all voted tonight on a motion to which you all said at the back end, yeah, we'll figure out how we're actually going to do it, but yet the motion doesn't say that. And you're talking about millions of dollars. I heard the PCF name come up at least 4 times. Do we have a contract with them? Does that contract stipulate that if someone such as myself purchases a brick and I give that money to them, they are contractually obligated to turn it over to Pennridge? They are a 501c3. They are their own entity. So unless you have a contract with them, there's nothing that requires them by law to turn that over. And people are going to be giving millions of dollars in good faith. It is at most disheartening, if not disingenuous, to have seen what has been asked of parents in this community for the last several months. And the board themselves, when talking about 10 times the amount of money, cannot present to the public how you're going to collect it and what the rules of the game are and who's going to be accountable and responsible for this kind of money. I hope that gets fixed soon.
Thank you, Mrs. Hare. Yes, Mrs. Yardley. If you'll wait momentarily, Mrs. Bino.
Hi, Kelly Benno, Percy. I wasn't going to...
Wait, would you, Mrs. Yardley has a,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
if you don't mind.
We talked about.
Can you speak up, please?
Can't hear you.
I do have a different mic than everybody. We have 3 of us have different microphones. Sorry, my microphone is on.
But you're not in front of it.
We talked about PCEF. I never stated during the meeting that PCEF was collecting any money. All the money is being collected by the school district in a special revenue account. And the administration is setting up the procedures as they would. So it's the school district collecting the money, and we've set the pricing for everything. And the administration will finish with the details. Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Bino.
Kelly Benno, Percy. I wasn't actually going to talk about this tonight, but it was mentioned about the computers. And an issue that we had over the summer is I have a 10th grader who is taking AP History. And so with this being the very first full class with the computers, I think this should be maybe addressed and talked about. If it's possible for those kids taking AP courses over the summer or any class that requires a lot of work to be completed over the summer, that maybe they could have their computers returned quickly after school is finished so that I know in my household we didn't purchase additional computers because they were getting school computers, but what we ran into is she had about 30 hours of AP work to do over the summer, so she borrowed my computer, and then when school started, all of her work was on my computer, not on her school computer, which she needed to study for her first exam. I know next summer I'll have another student going into 10th grade, so that's another student who may need my computer once again. So I didn't know if it could be discussed that any kids requiring schoolwork to be done over the summer to be able to get their computer to be able to be used during the summer. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. I am Chris Littman, Bedminster Township,
and I just wanted to give you guys some praise tonight. On behalf of myself and a lot of other members of the community, we cannot be more happy with the progress of the stadium and Hellman Field. So thank you. Specifically, Dr. Radigan, Mr. Loeffler, when I heard you guys were going to build a stadium in 3 months, being in the construction industry, I completely doubted you. But all I can say is job well done, sir. Job well done. Thank you very much for making us proud, Pennridge proud, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Furlong.
Sue Furlong, West Rock Hill Township. I have 2 issues. One is I was expecting tonight that you would have a motion to set up that special account. I don't know, maybe that doesn't have to happen. And then I guess my other question has to do with the computers, the difference between the 9th graders and the 10th graders. I know that we have the academic performance, and we sit there and we discuss which textbooks and are we going to buy them, how many, how much. And I would look at the computers in a very similar light, in that publicly we would make that decision. I mean, we made it last year publicly. I'm not sure why this year the decision as to what was going to be used in the classroom didn't get the same treatment as a textbook, where it would be at least publicly discussed, and the pros and cons of making the change or not making the change to a different model and different specifications. So I was just a little bit surprised to find out things had been changed without any discussion in the Academic Performance Committee. Another thing is that I do recall there was $650,000 in the budget that went to Harrisburg for purchasing computers, and that was part of the decision to qualify for the exemptions. So it appeared to me that it was mentioned that you wanted to save money, but I recall $650,000 being in the budget. So I'm curious what happened with the money that you saved by making a different choice. And again, I'm surprised that that decision wasn't public, since it was part of the budget.
Mrs. Johnson or Mr. Smith? All right, Mrs. Johnson or Mr. Smith, can you comment on this budget issue?
Actually, the board did approve the purchase of those computers publicly during Mr. Tirado when he presented the technology budget, and then when we passed the budget that evening, there was a motion to approve the leasing of these particular computers. So the board very much did make that decision. They were provided with the information regarding what we were purchasing. So it was done in the at a public meeting.
Thank you. Mrs. Furlong, anything else?
I don't think that it was fully discussed that they were different specs. I mean, I'm sure that was in the budget, but the idea that you were going from a 15-inch down to a 10-inch and less computing power, that kind of thing, I don't think that was fully vetted. You did vote on it, but I don't even know if you understood the difference in the quality. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Questions or comments from the press? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.